How'd you like to listen to .NET Rocks with no ads? Easy. Become a patron. For just $5 a month, you get access to a private RSS feed where all the shows have no ads. $20 a month will get you that and a special .NET Rocks patron mug. Sign up now at patreon.netrocks.com.
Hey, Carl and Richard here. As you may have heard, NDC is back, offering their incredible in-person conferences around the world. And we'd like to tell you about them. NDC Copenhagen is happening August 27th through the 31st. The early bird discount for NDC Copenhagen ends June 2nd. Go to ndccopenhagen.com for more information.
NDC Porto is happening October 16th through the 20th. The early bird discount for NDC Porto ends July 21st. Go to ndcporto.com to register.
And check out the full lineup of conferences at ndcconferences.com. Oops, I did it again. It's .NET Rocks. This is Carl Franklin.
And this is Richard Campbell.
And again, we're...
Are you channeling your inner Britney Spears? Is that what you're doing?
I don't know. You know, I'm so out of jokes, it's not even funny. Please send me jokes. Somebody, please. So we are continuing our pile-up of recordings before the conference season starts.
I think this is the last one.
I think this is the last one.
Yeah, next time we record, we'll be at Techorama in Antwerp.
Yeah, wow. That's right. Okay, yeah, I'm looking. Boy, man, we really crushed it in the last week.
We had some fun, huh? It's been a while since we've gone. You know, this once a week thing is so easy for us.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. I mean, from the back in the times when we did 3 times a week.
Yep.
But yeah, we sort of did the 3 times a week feel and schedule to get a few weeks ahead, so we can go to conferences and be confident that we'll publish every week, no matter what.
Right. Exactly. No, you won't see any reruns here on .NET Rocks. We don't do that.
No, that's not what we do.
No, there's always stuff to talk about, including Better Know Framework. So let's roll the crazy music.
All right, man. What do you got?
What I got, more hipper than what you got. All right, so this is an article that came out on the 12th of April on The Verge.
You've been reading The Verge lately, I notice.
It's got some good stuff, you know. They report about stuff that you don't hear anywhere else. That might mean it's bullcrap, but who knows? So this story is Microsoft is changing the print screen key to open its own snipping tool on Windows 11.
I think I like this.
You do?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because right now when you hit print screen, you don't even know if you hit print screen.
It's true.
Right? Like on many keyboards, the print screen button is buried behind like a function key or something else, right? Yeah. So it's like, did it hit print screen or not? You got to go fire up Paint and check your clipboard. Yeah. As we all do. So the fact that now you'll know you hit it because immediately the snipping tool appears, I kind of like this.
Well, there are other tools that do that, right? So if you have what's the one from Camtasia, TechSmith, right? There's a grabber or something like that that's everybody's been using for years.
For years and years.
So people have these tools. I like you, Richard, I got used to, opening Paint, copying, cropping, all that stuff. And it's just my workflow. So,
right.
I'll give it a try.
Well, and it sounds like you can adjust the settings. So if you want to use something else, knock yourself out.
Okay.
You could just set it up so that it goes to Paint automatically, just opens Paint.
That's pretty cool. So it is the first time in decades that the print screen button functionality has changed in Windows. So it's a momentous occasion. And I will give it a shot, because
without a doubt.
Change is fine. As long as I have a good workflow and I get used to it, that's great.
No. Change is good. You go first.
You go first. All right, man. Who's talking to us today?
Grabbed a comment off a show 1838, not that long ago, back in March of 2023, when we talked to one Javier Nelson and Steve Sanderson. We were talking about Blazor United, because it's the all WASM show these days, isn't it? If we're not talking AI, we're talking WASM.
By the way, a preview just came out that has some of the Blazor United stuff in it just a couple days ago. Yeah.
As usual, those guys are crazy smart, and that is
awesome.
Really cool stuff. So Bear, and that's the name, Bear. Bear says, I love the work that Microsoft does on Blazor, and I truly believe that WebAssembly, or something similar, I don't think there's anything similar, will be the future. Well, client development for sure. There are other futures. There's a future involving Mars, and I don't think it needs WebAssembly.
It might.
Might.
You never know. I hope it does, actually.
Let's talk to Elon. I would really like to hear a show about why Microsoft chooses technology like React in their products instead of Blazor. And his example that he cites is the new version of Teams. So Teams 2.0, they moved off of Electron, and they're now using React. And Bear says, what are the reasoning behind such choices?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts, Carl.
Yeah, well, my thought is they like to choose stuff that's done and used and established. And not that Blazor isn't done, but it's still, as you say, a moving target because of what's happening with Blazor United. They're still innovating. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
More importantly, it's like you're only hearing about the move to React now when they're finished. How long have they been working on it? 2 years? So what was Blazor like 2 years ago? Right. And then you like get into the other reality that we know very well, which is that Microsoft is not one big company.
Right.
It's many different groups. And the Teams group gets to make their own choices.
Right.
And they support open source, even open source made by Facebook. So, yeah, I mean, I think that choice was made a long time ago when there weren't alternatives.
It's a good choice.
And they made a good choice. And it doesn't mean that they don't change the stack for Teams 3.0.
Because what's the alternative? Like, they come out with something that uses what? Blazor, not even Blazor 6, right? It would have been earlier than that.
Yeah, the love affair you have with Blazor right now is recent.
Yes.
Right? We saw the potential long ago, but when you actually need to rebuild a product that's used by literally hundreds of millions of people, you have to have some pretty good confidence that framework is going to do everything you need it to do.
Well, and that it isn't going to change and disrupt everything. I think that's the more important thing, right? With React.
Totally fair.
Yeah.
So, Bear, I hope that addresses your question. I don't know if there's a show in there or not, but I'm not saying I wouldn't do it either. Although I might actually do it over on Run As Radio, where we talk a fair bit more about Teams in the M365 context. Bear did end his message with .NET rocks. And we think so too.
Yeah, we do.
And a copy of Music to Code By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or on Facebook. We publish every show there as well. And if I read your comment, we'll send you a copy of Music to Code By.
And, you can follow us on Twitter if you like. That's great. But the real cool people are over on Mastodon. So follow us there. I'm at Carl Franklin at techhub.social.
And I'm Rich Campbell at mastodon.social.
Send us a toot. Rudy toot toot. And let's bring on an old friend of .NET Rocks. We haven't talked to Jakub, since what, 2016, I think?
Yeah.
So this is going to be all about PeachPie on WebAssembly. And Jakub Míšek is a veteran .NET developer. He's going to tell you all about it. He's a co-founder of IO Level, where he's working on the PeachPie compiler platform. Co-founder of DevSense, where he's providing advanced PHP development tools for Visual Studio and VS Code. He's a sports enthusiast and PhD candidate in software engineering in the Charles University in Prague. Welcome back.
Hi there.
Hey.
Great to be back.
I was asking Jakub how I pronounce his name, and he gave me this pronunciation, and I said, well, what does your mother call you? And he says, son. So I almost did it.
I love it.
Son is a veteran .NET developer. No, never mind. Okay. Remind us what PeachPie is.
All right. So PeachPie is a compiler of PHP language into the .NET assembly. So it's actually the same compiler as a C# compiler. It translates the language into this managed bytecode MSIL. But it's not just the compiler, it's also the whole supporting runtime library and all the PHP extensions re-implemented into the C# language. So it's really the complete PHP language platform, including support for Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code for .NET. So it's completely managed.
Is it surprising to you, as it is to me, that there isn't PHP support in Visual Studio and in .NET just in the box?
Actually, there is like small support in Visual Studio, like text or syntax highlighting, syntax colorization.
Right.
Actually, I have a second product which fully integrates the native PHP into Visual Studio. because it's not there yet.
Okay.
And there's really a lot of people working in Visual Studio. They just need to work with PHP as well. So
right. Yeah.
So that's it.
And we want something a little bit better than just a text editor. We want this to compile right to .NET.
We like to live in Studio, right? And have all our tools at our disposal.
Yeah. Wow, that's very cool. So the story now is WebAssembly support.
Yeah, right. So we did it like a year ago, and then just we didn't to care about it. But once I saw your email, I was surprised that you remember. Actually, it's pretty cool because having a compiler of some language into .NET is giving you great opportunities, because once you have a language compiled to .NET, you can do anything without actually doing anything, because everything is just managed by Microsoft and all the great people working on the project. So
right. Once you get to IL, you're smooth sailing.
Yeah, you have debugging, you have like performance profiling, and you have WebAssembly as well. So we just actually tried it. We compiled PHP into MSIL, and we ran it on WebAssembly, which is actually like mono runtime, right? Mm-hmm. It's actually mono runtime hooked into your browser, like interpreting your MSIL code, and it magically works with compiled PHP as well. It didn't even notice it's not C#, right?
So one big use case that comes to mind is you have a Blazor application, and then there's some, maybe some, I don't know, scientific or financial or other kind of academic routines in PHP that you want to include, and rather try to convert the source code from PHP to C# and get it running that way. You can just turn it into an assembly, and you can create its own an assembly class library with it, and just add it to your project.
Right. You can have it all in the same directory. Your C#, PHP, everything. You can have few project files. One project file for C#, one project file for PHP. It gets linked together, and you can even communicate between C#, PHP, JavaScript, everything together. Everything gets native marshaled into .NET, so nobody knows what's the other language actually. Wow. You can now call JavaScript right from PHP and vice versa, and really everything together. You can even have a component in your Blazor website, in your Blazor page, which is in PHP, and the rest of the page is in C#.
So you've got a page or a component, and you might have some inline, markup control statements at if and all that stuff, which is C# or before each or whatever. But then you call in a code behind file, right? Your code behind file can be in PHP rather than C#.
Right. You can have either code behind file in PHP, or PHP developers are web designers as well. They half of the PHP projects are front ends.
Sure.
So they have a lot of front end controllers in PHP, PHP/HTML. Mm-hmm. So you can even have a part of your Blazor page as a PHP
rendered with PHP,
yeah.
Rather than the Blazor component model.
Because you can create small 5-line code which represents a component in Blazor, in C#.
Yeah.
And inside that control, you can render your PHP using our PeachPie API. You can put it all together, and in the end, you don't even know what language you are actually using.
Now, I'm baffled because PHP to me was like ASP.NET web forms. It was a server-side technology that spat out HTML, and then you posted back to the server to execute more PHP to render something else. All those metaphors involve a trip to the server. What happens when you're living in a client?
There's a lot of differences actually, because when you are working with PHP, you expect the server, and the file system and database and everything. So actually, we don't have to care about it, because there is this .NET standard library, and all the PHP calls, all the PHP APIs are translated to something .NET in the end. So
wow.
If it throws an exceptions like not supported exception, it just does. We can't do anything about it.
And it's web world, so it's just going to keep running. Right?
It just keeps running.
On error, resume next.
Yeah, but you can implement almost anything. So if you miss a feature like file system or anything, you can just create a file system provider and
make happy noises.
It makes happy noises, yeah. And you can have some virtual file system behind, and it will work.
Right. I mean, now you're talking about PHP as SPA.
That's essentially what it is. A single page application.
As a single page application, right? That all of it would be executing in the browser, and then possibly calling what it thinks are back-end components, but are actually just components in .NET that are making the remote call to fetch data. It's PHP as SPA.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. We should call it like that. We should call it like that.
Yeah, because when you hear PeachPie, I'm thinking Raspberry Pi, which is, it's still a fruit in front of the word pie. So what? Peach? Yeah. I get it now. But
yeah, I think we were looking for a fruit actually, because everything that time was fruit. So
well, and PeachPie has PHP in it. Like
I get it.
I do equate it that way. I don't know that you can give up on that brand just yet, but this PeachPie SPA just amuses me, right? Or it's just because that's effectively what you're doing, even though it's not necessarily the same set of metaphors. It's like, no, this would work. It's just weird.
It makes sense. I will use it somewhere, because actually since we have it all managed and we can like play around and we have our own runtime, we can do like stuff like, for example, PHP lives within its request. Once the request ends, everything you did in your PHP code, all the memory, all the variables, everything just dies.
Right.
But with PeachPie, we actually don't have this single multiple process approach. We have multi-threaded approach. So all the requests are threads.
Just kick up a thread.
Process, and we can keep things living in the process. So, for example, with the WebAssembly, we can like keep the context of the application living across more requests. So you can gain a great performance boost, because like 80% of, for example, 80% of empty Laravel page is just initializing stuff and loading classes and declarations and everything. And we can do it just once and keep it in memory. So there is a great possibilities that like we could do it if someone would care.
What's interesting about that is that WebAssembly isn't really fully getting multi-threaded support, the Blazor WebAssembly, until .NET 8, but there's like a little preview now. You can take a look at it, but WebAssembly obviously can be multi-threaded, so you're taking advantage of that even before Blazor does.
Yeah, there's a lot of things related. First, it's not multi-threaded, but it's async. So you can run small tasks in a row. But PHP is not async. So
when you say it's not multi-threaded, do you mean PeachPie, WebAssembly, or Blazor?
Like WebAssembly is, as I remember when I was using it, it's everything with JavaScript was not multi-threaded because it's not ready for it yet. You don't have any critical sections, any monitors, any logs. So I think it's purely async. So you can put your small tasks into the task scheduler, await them, and it will get executed somewhere. PeachPie is multi-threaded, but since we have to behave like PHP, we just behave like we are not multi-threaded.
So I'm reading from web.dev/webassembly-threads, and it says WebAssembly thread support is one of the most important performance additions to WebAssembly, and this is from July 2021. It allows you to either run parts of your code in parallel or on separate cores or on the same code over independent parts of the input data, scaling it to as many cores as the user has and significantly reducing all overall execution time. So
awesome. I know there is a open issue on Blazor that Microsoft should do it. It's
right, and they're working on it.
And there's a framework, or how is it called? UNO.
Uno,
which is multi-threaded.
Yeah.
But PHP is not, so...
Well, it looks like WebAssembly has multi-threading through this workers thing from JavaScript. But WebAssembly does have multi-threading.
But the question is, can those workers work like threads?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm going to post this link so Richard can add it.
I was actually recently doing a extension for VS Code running in browser. And I took our extension written in C# in .NET, and we just compiled it to WebAssembly and running it in VS Code in browser.
Nice.
Just like that.
That's so cool.
We had a problem with threading because we just couldn't start threads.
Okay.
All the threads were just queuing after each other, and
you may have to use the worker constructor to create them.
Yep. But they couldn't talk to each other very well, so we couldn't share a memory. We had to use some kind of...
Okay. Now I'm reading that there's a shared array buffer.
Yeah, something like that. So it's not the threading as we are used to, but the convenient way.
Right.
Anyways,
well, that's good to know that you're thinking about it, and that eventually it'll work itself out.
Yeah, definitely. One day, it would be great for PHP because they are like trying to get the benefit of threads, but it's not fully there yet.
Well, yeah, because that whole worker role thing in the browser has always been a bit wonky. I don't know if it's stable now because WebAssembly's pressed against it. I hope it is, but you used to be able. We always were proposed this idea of you're going to be able to call this worker helper, and it's going to be able to run this thing independently. But it never seemed to actually work like that.
Yeah,
but I think that's different when you look at the WebAssembly level and you're literally running inside the context where JavaScript would normally run, and say, "Hey, I just want to be able to do these things." Because I don't think of PHP as multi-threaded either, right? Like normally you're going back to a server with a short-lived instance that executes and dies. And so, maybe using multiple threads, but they've got nothing to do with each other.
Right. There is no like native support for threads. There is an extension for doing things on a background thread, but again, it's not like we are used to from C# that you can share variables and do stuff like...
Because we're living in webland where all of this stuff is on the server and short-lived. Like, why would you spend the energy setting up a bunch of threads when you're going to tear them down in a few seconds anyway?
Yep.
Are there any other implementations of PHP as a client-only system?
Actually, there is a native PHP running as a WebAssembly. So I think they even got running Drupal framework purely in browser with SQLite.
Wow.
And it seems to work. I haven't noticed like anyone using it actually, but it's there. The only downside is it's pretty large. You have to download like 10, 20 megabytes of data.
You're talking about Drupal though. Like that's big.
Drupal and the PHP runtime itself, because you have to download the whole PHP runtime as a WebAssembly.
You're just bombing around GitHub. I think I found 3 WebAssembly runtimes for PHP. So people are experimenting, right?
But 2 of them are dead already. There's just one alive.
When it's thriving.
And obviously the performance of your code is going to increase when it's running in WebAssembly versus when it's on the server. It's not a system like Blazor where there's like a graph for every user on the server, and it's not like Blazor server. So I guess when you take code that you've run on the server and then now move it to the client, there's going to be a performance increase in many, many situations, isn't there?
There will be an increase because you have the whole PC dedicated to your request.
Right.
So the response will be immediate. You don't have to wait for network. You don't have to wait for the server, and the server doesn't have to process like thousands of users at any time. But at the same time, there might be a performance decrease because it's still running on a mono runtime, and it's actually not compiled to the machine code, right?
Right, it's interpreted, right?
As far as I know, because we are trying to make it a running compiled native ahead of time, which will be a thing one day.
Right, sure. Yeah, now let's talk. You're bringing this up. WebAssembly requires that it downloads, well, until Blazor United, which will be great. It requires that it downloads all the DLLs and web and assemblies that it needs before it can run. And so what is PeachPie on WebAssembly? How big is that download?
Yeah, we actually designed it with this in mind, because we wanted to take advantage of assembly trimming.
Sure.
And make the resulting published assemblies as small as possible. Mm-hmm. So we are actually doing a small trick during the compilation, and we are creating a table of used classes and methods. So the trimming knows the methods are used, and it won't just cut them off. Yeah. Otherwise, PHP is a dynamic language, and you never know what method, what function will be called. So we just annotating and using this trick to avoid trimming stuff that will be used, that will be called. And in the result, you can get everything trimmed and published to like 4 to 6 megabytes.
Wow.
And that's on top of the basic WebAssembly
including
stuff.
including .NET runtime.
Oh, including Oh, okay. So that's about what it is anyway, isn't it? It's like 2.5 megabytes right now, something.
Yeah. If you have a small PHP app, just few classes and everything, it's just nothing.
Yeah. Okay. So nothing to worry about.
If you have PDBs embedded, so you can debug and everything, which is awesome because you are like debugging PHP in Visual Studio, and Visual Studio doesn't even know it's PHP. I like it. It's like 10 megabytes, which is all right.
Mm-hmm. So what happens in the world of Blazor United when you can start off with a Blazor server application and then it will download all the assemblies in the background? Is there any way that PeachPie can sort of ride that bandwagon?
I think I'm a little bit like I don't know what's Blazor United yet.
Oh, okay.
I've been a little bit.
We're going to have to talk to you later
behind
about this because I think there's an opportunity. I don't know though. I don't know. I mean, but if you're basically talking about .NET assemblies, just going from the server to the client, you might be able to hitch a ride on that. So essentially what it means is if you're familiar with Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly and the two different models, Blazor Server uses SignalR as a circuit in the background and it keeps a graph of the DOM for each user in memory. And when there's some code change, some UI code change or whatever you want to call some code, it happens dynamically through SignalR, and on the server the code is executed and then it looks at a diff of the DOM and what has changed, and it sends back these really small binary messages through JavaScript that updates the browser. So it's fast, right?
That's how it was before, right? I remember.
Yeah.
I remember Blazor is putting IDs. Internally, it remembers the DOM tree with little IDs, and it just updates the element.
Yeah, it's like magic.
The changes.
Yeah, and so what happens now is Blazor WebAssembly, of course, you have to wait for everything to be downloaded. So they have this auto mode in Blazor United that you start on the server, and in the background, all the WebAssembly DLLs get downloaded, and when they come to life, boom, you're running on the client. And that's really cool. So, I think that's going to be the future of Blazor. It's just going to be called Blazor. There won't be Blazor United, of course, but.
All right.
Yeah. So wouldn't it be cool if you guys could sort of hitch a ride in that mechanism? So you should be talking to Steve Sanderson.
All right. I think like a year ago, we've been working with a student from our university, Thomas, which Thomas was it? It was Thomas Husak, another guy. And he was actually building an SDK for Blazor and PHP. And he created a Blazor control, which behaves like an element in the DOM tree, but it renders PHP inside it. And it could do this kind of stuff, like it remembers what was changed, and it could send just the differences.
Yeah,
I think
this is the PeachPie Blazor GitHub repo, right? That you sent a link to.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one. we still need to update it to the latest .NET, but it's in .NET 5 right now.
Wow.
But there's a potential in that. We are doing this kind of stuff.
Fantastic.
This component is really, I think, it can change just the stuff that was changed. And we even have an API for PHP code itself, so developers can just change only the stuff they want to, like in React or other frameworks.
And gentlemen, I need to interrupt for one moment for this very important message. And we're back. It's .NET Rocks. I'm Richard Campbell. That's Carl Franklin.
Hey.
Talking to our friend Jacob a bit about PHP and WebAssembly. And I was just thinking, wow, we've come a long way since Phalange.
Hey.
We talked to Thomas Petrusek back in like 2007.
Yeah,
2007.
Those early days, but of course, that project's now I think fully in archive. It's become PeachPie, like it has a direct lineage.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was working on Phalange like 16 years ago with Thomas. Thomas did a great stuff with Silverlight and implementing like a lot of code.
Don't say the S word.
that amount of work.
Yeah,
sure.
And it's actually PeachPie is the reincarnation of Phalange because we needed a new platform. We needed to use Roslyn compiler platform.
Right.
We needed new .NET. We needed to avoid the old system reflection emit APIs because that's really slow. And thanks to this change, we cut the compile time from like on large projects from 2 minutes to 4 seconds. So
wow,
Roslyn
that's taking advantage of the new .NET too.
New .NET and Roslyn actually because we can just emit code in parallel and without calling into the native system stuff. So that was a great change, and I feel like WebAssembly is also the reincarnation of Silverlight in
functionality.
Yes,
it has the possibility, at least.
Yeah,
you don't get XAML for free, right? Like,
thank God, though.
Thank God. Yeah.
XAML should just die.
You've had enough of XAML.
I've had enough of XAML.
Who misses that?
Yeah,
I Billy. I love Billy. Billy loves XAML. It doesn't mean I have to love XAML.
And not a lot of MVVM in your life either, right? Like I think that's what I think about when I think about Silverlight is MVVM in XAML with C#.
Yeah, MVVM is kind of required when you use XAML, and when you use Blazor, the consensus is that it isn't really all that important.
There are other ways.
Yeah, and you can do the same stuff. Like Thomas, 13, 14 years ago, he did a game in Silverlight using PHP, this helicopter where he was shooting stones or something. And we actually achieved to make a game in WebAssembly using PHP and Blazor as well. So you can do that actually.
Wow,
very cool.
And are you calling into the canvas for that?
We are not rendering it. We are actually manipulating with HTML elements.
Oh,
holy man!
Using PHP, so you can.
Crazy.
That's the other thing. You can call JavaScript right from your PHP code.
Sure.
So PHP became a client-side language.
Yeah,
which I'm still just wrestling with.
Yeah, me too.
It's an interesting way to think.
You know, I think I cut you off or changed the subject when you were mentioning the AOT compilation, ahead of time compilation feature of WebAssembly and Blazor in particular. What were you going to say about that?
In the context of PHP, it's a nightmare.
Ooh, okay.
No, because in theory we cannot use it because PHP is a dynamic language and you never know what API you will need to use. You never know what functions will be called. So we have this switch in a compiler where we can tell, okay, if you are really sure our compiler discovered all the functions that will be called, just go ahead. But in most cases, I wouldn't. It's just test it. Just do a lot of tests.
Yeah.
Otherwise, of course, in dynamic language, you never know. We have some compiler options to exclude to exclude references to libraries like MySQL, Microsoft SQL, Postgres, and so on. So you can manually exclude references to those assemblies, which helps.
Server-side things.
Yeah. Scripting, for example, we have the whole dynamic compilation. So you can do eval. Is it pronounced eval, like evil?
Eval.
I don't know.
Yeah.
For us, it's evil. We call it evil. So you can turn it off to make it smaller, because without evil, you don't need the whole compiler, right?
Sure.
So it makes it smaller, and so on and so on. So if you are sure you are statically linking all the stuff you need, you can turn the native ahead of time compilation on, and then it works. We have some issues by people who tried it. Actually, I wasn't brave enough to try it with PHP yet.
Okay.
I'm just reading those issues and answering things like, "Thank you for the issue. I hope you know what you are doing."
Yeah,
that should be a great error message, right? Or at least a warning. I hope you know what you're doing.
it's your foot.
Yeah. It should be a warning message in the compiler.
Always come up. Although it's almost implied with every one of those warnings.
Yeah, we have a similar warning in there for finalizers,
right?
In PHP, because in PHP you have this deterministic garbage collection, but in .NET it's not deterministic.
Right.
You never know when it happens, and it happens on another thread. But in PHP it's always happening deterministically, like at the end of the function or somewhere you can expect it, because there is a reference counting implemented. So if anyone has a finalizer in their PHP code, we just pop up a warning during the compilation time. You have a finalizer. It's not like it won't work. It just won't work.
Can you implement iDisposable?
You can implement it, but you have to call it explicitly.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's the indication, right? Anytime I create an object, I look to see if it has a dispose method, and if it does, I call it. That's just something we've gotten used to as .NET developers.
That would be nice. Yeah. It's not there in PHP.
Okay.
All right.
I know what you're going to say, Richard.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think so. Go ahead.
WordPress.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going.
I mean, when you talk about PHP, it's one of the largest applications in the world. It's the most popular CMS in the world. It's bloody everywhere. And the PHP is the back end of it, but now you could be running it in the front end. This is not a good idea. But boy, it'd be a fun thought experiment. Like, what would that even look like?
All right. So, we have some discussion with community about it. I think some people actually tried it. They ported Laravel already, which is the biggest business framework for PHP.
Right.
But WordPress is something like you just put it on the server and it works.
Yes.
Or
more saliently, you buy it for $3 a month from a provider somewhere, right? Like you don't even need to install it anymore, really.
Yeah, and you just download your plugins and themes from the dashboard. So
right.
It's totally different approach than .NET. But in theory, it works. We have it compiled in a normal way without WebAssembly in like 20 megabytes. So compiled.
But it's not that. I would have thought it would be bigger than that. That's surprising.
It's a small project.
Well, but it's very file system based. So now you have the whole problem of where do you put all the file?
Yeah. Thankfully, we have all the file system APIs we have re-implemented in C#, and we can do whatever we want. So internally we have this file system provider, and just in case just in the context of WebAssembly, we can just re-implement it to behave like something else.
Sure.
I'm sure WebAssembly has, or in browser, you can have storage in browser, so you can upload your files.
Yeah. You have.
Yeah, it's a little limited. I would also think like quick over SMB, which is sort of the most bare metal way to communicate over the internet safely for files, would be pretty impressive. Although you still get the latencies.
in WebAssembly, you have access to files within your local web root kind of thing, but it isn't anything that you can really, really access and use. But you do have, of course, local storage, right? And session storage. Local storage, you get 5 megabytes per URL for whatever. And you could certainly use that, but it isn't like you can just reach out and open a file in a documents folder or that kind of, or write a file in the system. Yeah.
Yeah, we could bend the WordPress a little bit so it wouldn't be that excessive with the file system access. But
and let's be clear, WordPress is already bent, right? Like it's not a stretch. People do crazy things with WordPress all the time.
You can do anything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There are extension points everywhere in the code. You can really change everything. So in this way, we could just disable some functionalities to make it smaller and lighter. We could make something like a virtual file system, so your files could be on some cloud provider maybe. Other files would be behaving like they are, because WordPress is touching all the files all the time. It's just calling file exists for many things to just check it's there.
Right.
So we can just return like true, it's there.
Now,
don't bother me with that.
Here's an even more ridiculous thought experiment. Last time I checked, Facebook still uses PHP. Could they be shipping some stuff down to WebAssembly?
Wow.
Would they? Does that even make sense?
Client-side Facebook.
Even faster. That would have like 2 gigabytes, right?
Easy. It'd be massive. Like,
no, I think they moved to HHVM, right? And now a portion of the code is written in all the other languages. I think we spoke to some guys from Facebook, and they are using all kinds of languages. PHP is just a small portion of their code set, code base.
Which you expect. Just because you started in one place doesn't mean you change. You know, once upon a time, Twitter was written in Ruby.
There are still pieces of Ruby, right? In
yeah,
Twitter.
I think so. But
it went off the rails.
Saying Facebook is PHP is any more correct than saying Twitter's in Ruby, right? Like, that's where they started, but things have changed.
Mm-hmm. Serverless Twitter would be awesome.
Well, I thought you said leaderless Twitter, but I wasn't going to say that.
I like how Rich Campbell has come around to my way of thinking about the crazy person in charge of Twitter.
Yeah.
So
at least it's fun.
It is fun. So on the list of gotchas, are there any? We talked about sort of the threading and asynchronous stuff, and some libraries that might not be ready for the browser because they access server-side things. Is there anything else that is a gotcha that you're still battling with?
The database is a question, because the database libraries are working in the browser, but you would have to call your database on the server.
Right. So
it's a question about security and also performance, because frameworks like, for example, WordPress are making tons of SQL queries within a single request. So that would be slow, I guess. But you can bundle SQLite.
Sure.
I think you can fit it into those few megabytes of storage. So
nice.
You could access IndexedDB, which would be, I think, better than SQLite. SQLite doesn't persist, does it?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it does, but I could be wrong.
Really, I think there's just file, and it can modify, but it wouldn't persist. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it isn't gonna stay like a database stays. You know.
Probably not.
No, you have to, if you want, you can use it, but then you have to sort of persist it with some other mechanism. But IndexedDB would be good for a local database. But I think that, there's lots of tech out there that's available in C# and, Blazor that already does this. The problem is solved. So if you essentially hook into those things, then you can call your APIs and you can call, whatever. Using all the frameworks that are already there in Blazor. But that's if you have a Blazor app that's calling PHP. If you have a pure PHP app, maybe you can add the Blazor components to, do your data management for you, your API stuff.
Oh, that sounds, yeah.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Tell me, is this project part of your PhD thesis?
Well, partially.
Really? I mean, you are a PhD candidate, which I find fascinating because that means you're on the path to actually be a computer scientist. You're clearly enamored of language and different operating constructs there. So,
yeah, I think I started my PhD in the context of the other work I'm doing, which is the language integration for Visual Studio, where I'm doing a lot of like PHP control flow analysis and data analysis and all the other stuff. So partially yes, because the compiler is actually an analysis tool.
It is.
So I did a lot of papers and presentations about code analysis and performance, and maybe like 20% of PeachPie is code analysis. So
right.
It is a part of PhD. I had some papers about Phalange, and I was working with some other students on some academic papers on PeachPie as well. So it is a part of it. It is major part is my other work where I'm doing like code diagnostics for Visual Studio. So it's all connected. It's all connected.
And they talk about a PhD thesis as contributing to the art. So I mean, you're helping our industry grow its thinking around compilers.
Not
to make it too heavy on you, Jacob, but that's the gig, right?
Yeah.
So maybe I should finish it, right?
No, there's that too. I mean, Niels Bohr's PhD thesis was the atomic model, the idea that protons and neutrons are in a nucleus surrounded by electrons. Like, it's a lie we tell children and adults, but it was a useful lie, and that literally, he contributed to the art. Like, I always think in those terms when I talk to someone working on a PhD. It's like, this is your contribution to our body of knowledge.
Of course, yeah. That's why I'm doing it. Yeah, sure.
Okay. He's awfully sarcastic, but,
And very humble.
No, never. I'm not. I don't know what it means.
Anyway, I'm excited for you.
Yeah,
it's fun to see what you group of you have pulled together here. Just it speaks to the power of WebAssembly once again, as if we didn't think it was powerful enough already. That it is possible to take these tools and through your past work, not knowing this would ever be possible, be able to implement it into the context of the browser.
Yeah, it's all thanks to the .NET. It's really great.
Yeah,
like I saw the work of native PHP guys doing all the work, making WebAssembly possible.
Yeah,
but we just didn't have to do anything. It just worked.
It happened quickly. Yeah,
yeah.
Who's on the righteous path now?
So, what's in your inbox? What's next for you?
For me,
yeah,
in context of WebAssembly
or whatever.
Actually, most of the time I'm working on the PHP language integration for Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code.
Okay.
Where we have tons of feedbacks and suggestions. So we are mainly improving code analysis. And actually, we are doing AI completion, like something like GitHub Copilot and stuff. But we have a deeper knowledge of PHP, and we have a lot of source code in PHP, so we can make it a little bit smarter. So we are working on AI right now.
Nice.
And performance, a lot of performance, because PHP projects are huge. It's really thousands and thousands of files, and people for some reason expect the language integration for the Visual Studio Code won't eat up all their memory and it will be super fast and things like that. So we are using various tweaks and knowledge about .NET to make it super fast. And that's like most of my work, because we have people complaining all the time. So we are improving this kind of work.
Okay.
So these are PHP tools for Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code.
Yes, for Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. Yes.
Right.
Which is fun because we started PHP tools for Visual Studio like 10 something years ago, which is actually a part. We just took a part of the compiler from Fellinger and use it for this IntelliSense for Visual Studio, and then we updated to .NET Standard, created NuGet packages from it, and used compilation to native code and made it an extension for Visual Studio Code out of the box.
Awesome.
So we didn't have to rewrite it to TypeScript, to JavaScript or anything, because Visual Studio Code is in JavaScript.
Nice.
And we just took C# and move it just like that, and boom, we had IntelliSense.
Well, it also means you can maintain it between the two code base. It's one code base.
Yeah, exactly. We have one set of tests. We have one code base, and
add a feature in one place, going to show up in the other.
Right.
Yeah,
that's great about it.
That's cool.
And then we have third integration for Visual Studio Code in browser, which is all those things compiled as a WebAssembly.
Jeez.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
So we really have just one code base, and it's running everywhere.
Yeah.
Mac OS, Linux, Windows, Visual Studio Code, everywhere.
And this is because .NET.
Yeah.
It's because of .NET, yeah. It's because we are working with .NET since version 1.0, and we just know some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives us that portability. Great story.
Yeah,
Jacob.
great story.
Congratulations on all this work. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you very much.
And thank you for spending this hour with us. It's been amazing.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Anytime.
Okay. We'll take you up on that. And we'll talk to you, dear listener, next time on .NET Rocks.
.NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Plop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time.
Got transmitter bands by the FCC. Yes, I'm a